Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're very excited to be speaking with you all today. This presentation is for the FY 2024 OVW Training and Technical Assistance Initiative solicitation. My name is Asma Nore, and I am a OVW grant program specialist for the TA initiative. And this presentation will be led by myself, Neelam Patel, team lead for training and technical assistance, and Alanda Thomas, grants financial analyst. Please keep in mind that because the solicitation is so lengthy and detailed, we're not able to cover all of the specific sections today, but we've highlighted some key sections for you, and we'll be going through some key reminders to help you with the application. It would be useful if you have the solicitation open on your end to go through, because we'll be referencing specific page numbers. And please also keep in mind that during the application process, we unfortunately won't be able to give you suggestions on the quality of your application, but we're happy to answer any questions that you have, and we can help you interpret things in the solicitation. So please feel free to reach out to us via email, and we'll be happy to assist you. All right, I'm going to be starting out by talking about a little bit of an overview of the OVWTA initiative. Our main goal is to provide direct training and technical assistance to current grantees of OVW, potential grantees, and sub-grantees to enhance their efforts and improve their projects. OVW's TA initiative is designed to provide services on a national level to victim service providers and organizations working on domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Please note that all proposed activities must serve at least one of the current OVW grant programs that are eligible to receive funds from OVW. The purpose areas in the solicitation, which we'll be going over in more detail later on in the presentation, will specify the specific grant programs or professional groups that the purpose area is targeted towards. You can always feel free to visit the OVW website to learn more about the different grant programs and all the different initiatives that we are funding. The TA initiative is not intended for applicants to seek funding to attend a training or host training for their specific organization or community. So for example, if you're looking specifically for funding to bring a training or a TA provider to your organization, that wouldn't be allowable under this solicitation, but we're really focusing on providing TA and training on a national level unless specified otherwise in the solicitation and the purpose areas. All right, and now I'll be going over some key application dates for you to keep in mind. Most important point is that the application is a two-step process. So you definitely don't want to wait until the last minute, because you'll have to complete one step before moving on to the next. The first step is the grants.gov deadline, which is Thursday, March 7th at 11:59 Eastern. Grants.gov is where you'll initiate the application, complete some standard forms, such as the SF-424 and the lobbying form, which I'll explain a little bit more later. And once you complete that step, you will be able to complete the rest of your application in just grants. And that final application, which includes your project narrative, your budget, really the bulk of your application, will be due Tuesday, March 12th, 8:59 Eastern. And then also there's a registration deadline of Thursday, February 15th. And this is to make sure that you register in grants.gov in time, and then also within SAM, which stands for System for Award Management. So please be sure to do these as soon as possible. And also keep in mind that if you forgot to upload a required document that you would need for grants.gov, you'll need to resubmit your full application again in Just Grants. However, if the grants.gov deadline has already passed, you wouldn't be able to then resubmit. So make sure that you have all of the required materials and documents in place before you click the final submit button in Just Grants. Another deadline to keep in mind of is again Thursday, February 15th for the letter of intent. This is not a required document, but it's highly encouraged. And there's a template on OVW's website so that you can see how to complete this. It's very minimal information, so it should be pretty quick to fill out, and you can send it directly to ovw.techassistance@usdoj.gov. This document helps ensure that applicants are well positioned to successfully submit their application, and it also notifies us ahead of time to be on the lookout for your application and helps us organize the applications a bit more. It's a non-binding letter, so if you submit this and end up not submitting a full application, there's no consequence. So if you are thinking that you might be interested in applying, please go ahead and submit this letter of intent by Thursday, February 15th. And this slide just covers more details on where to apply and some resources that'll help you navigate the different systems you'll be using. So the first link on here you'll see is grants.gov. Again, that's where you submit the standard forms, the SF-424 and the lobbying form. Some important information you'll need as you're verifying your application: the grants.gov opportunity number for this solicitation is listed on this slide. So just make sure that you're applying to the correct solicitation. And then we also have a couple of links for general applicants on our website. And then there's also specific trainings on navigating Just Grants. And those are all very helpful. So please be sure to review those so that you have assistance in navigating both grants.gov and Just Grants. All right, moving on to eligible applicants for the TA solicitation. You'll find more details on this on page 22 of the solicitation. Eligible applicants are national, tribal, statewide, or other nonprofit organizations. And these organizations should have the capacity to provide training at a national level. In some situations, we do fund institutions of higher education, state, local, tribal government agencies, or local nonprofits. So those are also eligible, but they will have to very clearly demonstrate their history of providing training and technical assistance at a national level. All right, and next I'll be discussing the purpose areas. This is where a lot of the information and details in the solicitation is. And you'll find these on pages 5 to 19. OVW has 4 categories under this solicitation: competitive targeted, non-competitive targeted, competitive comprehensive, and non-competitive comprehensive. And I just wanted to flag that the purpose area specific to the Tribal Affairs Division will be grouped together in their own section under each category. So if you're looking for tribal specific purpose areas, be sure to scroll down under each category and find that specific section. OVW will only support the purpose areas identified in the solicitation, so please don't create your own or modify the language. And we also ask that to avoid confusion in the terminology, that if you're applying for a targeted purpose area, please don't reference competitive, or please don't reference comprehensive in your application, just so that we are clear on which purpose area you're applying for. Targeted purpose areas are for in-depth technical assistance on specific topics. Comprehensive purpose areas are projects that promote delivery of TA and technical assistance to certain grant programs, professions, or critical areas. Comprehensive purpose areas can be competed every 5 years, but just keep in mind that funding is not guaranteed and is dependent on our appropriations. If you are eligible for a non-competitive purpose area, you will be contacted by your OVW program specialist on the award period and the budget amounts. So please keep in mind that if you're not already funded for one of the non-competitive purpose areas, your application will be removed from consideration. More important reminders about the purpose areas. Please make sure to respond to the description in the solicitation and don't create your own purpose area. It's the responsibility of each applicant to list the purpose area they're applying for in the abstract, the summary data sheet, and the project narrative. And also, please keep in mind that you are only allowed to apply for each purpose area once. And if you're applying for multiple different purpose areas, make sure that you specify exactly which one you're applying for in each application. Again, OVW will not match submitted applications to the purpose area, so make sure that you're clear on which documents are submitted under each application and each purpose area. And also, please be aware of the project period and the award amounts listed for each purpose area and do not exceed these amounts. In addition to the purpose areas, OVW also has 4 priority areas this year across the grant programs. Most of the TA purpose areas address one or more of the priority areas. So you're encouraged to incorporate them into your proposed project, but are not required to. But as long as you're addressing one of the identified purpose areas, you're likely to also address one or more of the priority areas. And I don't want to go too into detail on these so that we have time for other sections, but just as a quick overview, the priority areas include advancing equity and tribal sovereignty, increasing access to justice for all survivors, strengthening prevention efforts, and expanding economic justice and financial advocacy. Moving on to out-of-scope activities, you can find these listed on page 20. Please review these carefully and refrain from proposing any of these in your project. The out-of-scope activities for TA are projects that don't address one of the specified purpose areas, research projects, direct victim services, or projects focused on a single state, region, or local geographic area, unless that's specified in the purpose area. For the most part, most TA projects will be national. In addition to the out-of-scope activities, there's also activities you should keep in mind require prior approval from your OVW program specialist. These would be the use of surveys throughout your project. You are allowed 2% of the total project to assess various aspects of the project and for internal improvement. An example of this would be holding listening sessions to identify training and TA gaps, or administering surveys and evaluations during or after training to assess the quality. But these would be requiring approval from your program specialist. The next key section is the award period and amounts. These are listed for each of the competitive purpose areas between pages 5 to 19. So you'll see those specified, and please make sure to not exceed the amounts. But also keep in mind to be realistic of how much funding you would actually need to accomplish. So if your project needs 400,000 for all of your activities, but the purpose area has a cap of 500,000, you should propose 400,000 and not feel like there's a need to increase the amount to reach the 500,000 unnecessarily. And you'll notice that the non-competitive purpose areas do not have the award amounts listed. And again, they'll be contacted by their current OVW program specialists to talk about what the details of that application should be. And another flag here for you that applicants should be aware that all awards are dependent on our availability of appropriated funds. So there's no guarantee that these purpose areas would be funded in future years or for a similar amount. So what we have listed in this solicitation is only what we're able to fund for the 2024 fiscal year. For type of applicants, there's two distinct categories that a TA applicant would fall under: new applicants or a continuation applicant. The new applicant has never received funding under the TA initiative, or is a current or former TA provider that's applying to a purpose area they've not received funding for before, or they have received funding before, but their funding has expired on or before May of last year. And continuing applicants have an existing or a recently expired TA award under a purpose area. An important thing to note here is that all current TA providers with a substantial amount of remaining funding may not be considered for additional funding or may receive a reduced amount. And we define the substantial amount as 50% or more of the previous award that remains unobligated by March 31st of 2024. So if you have a significant amount of funding left on your current award, just be mindful that you may receive a reduced amount or not be considered for funding at all. Program requirements for TA initiative. The first one to make sure to account for in the budget is the requirement to attend OVW sponsored trainings. There's a minimum of 7,500 per project for 24 to 36 months and a minimum of 2,500 for 12-month projects that should be allocated for you all to attend OVW sponsored trainings. This would allow your project staff to attend important OVW meetings, trainings, and just make sure that you're building the skills necessary for your project and to be able to provide TA in general. And you can find more information on this in the budget section of the solicitation. Second requirement is that all applicants have to account for a planning period with their program specialist in their proposed project. So make sure to include this in your application and any project timelines you submit. And thirdly, all funded projects may be asked to participate in a assessment or evaluation, and you're required to comply with that if requested. And lastly, all TA providers will be required to report on their performance indicators, and more information on this could be found on our website on the VAWA Measuring Effectiveness Initiative webpage. Another requirement, I mentioned this earlier, but just to reiterate, applicants are limited to one application per purpose area as a prime applicant. If an applicant submits multiple applications for the same purpose area, we would just review the most recently submitted one. And then applicants submitting applications for multiple purpose areas have to separate those out and make sure you clarify exactly which purpose area you're applying for. And now I'll be discussing additional application requirements and the documents you'll need to prepare on your end to submit a complete application. A complete application would include the project narrative, the budget detail worksheet and narrative, the memorandum of understanding or MOU, and one letter of support. If you don't have all four of these documents, you will be deemed incomplete and might not be considered for funding. And also please make sure to keep in line with the formatting and technical requirements that are stated in the application. If there's major deviation from the formatting requirements, points might be deducted during the scoring period. In addition to the scored application documents, there's also some standard forms you would need to apply for federal funding. These are the SF-424 application for federal assistance, and the SFLLL, which is the disclosure of lobbying activities, and then the standard application information. So these are generated for you when you start the application process in grants.gov. They cover basic information about your organization, entity type, amount of funding you're applying for, and information about your organization's lobbying activities. Some key reminders here are that the estimated funding amount that you list in your SF-424 has to match the budget that you submit in Just Grants. So make sure that you verify those. And then also, TA does not use matching funds, so please don't include these in your budget. All right, the next key component of your application is the abstract, and this is discussed on page 25 of the solicitation. You're going to enter this into a text box that's generated for you in Just Grants. This is not scored, and please only submit the abstract within that text box. You don't need to attach a separate document in Just Grants. And we've also provided a very helpful template for you in the solicitation so that it's easier for you to fill this out. Please try not to summarize your past accomplishments in your abstract and include your purpose area. Additionally, you'll be asked to complete 3 surveys within the Just Grants system with this application. These request basic information, again, about your entity, your proposed project, and they're helpful to OVW in collecting data about our applicants. The first 2 are the pre-award risk assessment and the applicant entity questionnaire. And then we also have a summary data sheet that's specific to the TA initiative. These are not scored, but they are required. For the summary data sheet, it is 1 to 4 pages, and this would not be included in your total page limit. It includes your purpose area, your project title, your project partners, total budget, and then budget allocated for each of the project partners. The project narrative is the bulk of your application and it's worth 65 points. It has 3 sections: the purpose of the proposal, and that's worth 20 points, what will be done, which is 30 points, and who will implement the project, which is 15 points. Applicants applying for any of the targeted purpose areas have to limit their application to 20 pages, double spaced for that project narrative. And then competitive comprehensive purpose areas are limited to 25 pages, double spaced. I'm going to cover some more details about the project narrative. So applicants must respond to the criteria under each of the sections, and you'll find a lot more detail about these in the solicitation. Make sure that you're responding to the purpose area and the specific target audience that's listed in that purpose area. And then your timeline should also be included within the page limit, either 20 pages or 25 pages. And also please make sure to follow the font requirements. Any charts that you include should be single spaced, but they should be consistent with the font requirements as well. And make sure that you do not include any photos or other images in your project narrative. A few more details for the what will be done section. Make sure that you provide a clear link between the activities you're proposing and the need that you've identified for that training and technical assistance. One of the questions that we get pretty often is what types of delivery methods should an applicant propose for their project? And it really depends on whichever delivery methods are best suited for your goals and objectives and for the specific issues that the purpose area is aiming to address. Under the what will be done section, we also wanted to cover a little bit about accessibility. All TA in training has to be responsive to individuals that have disabilities, individuals that are hard of hearing or deaf or limited English proficient. So make sure that you account for this within your project narrative and then also in your budget. And that brings me to the budget detail worksheet and narrative section. This is again 15 points. Each purpose area has a budget cap and a project period, so make sure you verify those as you're applying. All budget details and budget narratives would be uploaded in Just Grants as an attachment. We are not using the web-based budget feature. So again, make sure that they're uploaded as attachments and that you've accounted for all the various resources that you would need to successfully implement the project. One of those again would be the resources you would need to make the project truly accessible, whether that's accessibility accommodations for your events or interpretation needs for training and technical assistance. OVW does have discretion to make awards for greater or lesser amounts than requested. And this just depends on the specific needs of the grant program that would be funding that TA project. The cost of the budget should correlate very closely with the activities you're proposing in your project narrative, and we should be able to see a very clear link between your goals, objectives, and activities and what you're proposing in the budget. And another reminder that there is a requirement for OVW TA providers to account for funding to attend training events. So make sure that you account for those within your budget. And within the next few slides, we'll be discussing issues related to the grants financial management division, and I will be transitioning over to Alanda Thomas, grants financial analyst, to talk about this.
In the next couple of slides, we are going to focus on aspects of your application that relate to the documents that our financial team, the Grants Financial Management Division, reviews. More specifically, we'll discuss some items that GFMD has identified from prior years' applications that could help with expediting our review process. So for today, we're going to highlight certain aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you with a link to a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included in your application. First, we'll highlight the items identified in the summary data sheet, which is completed by all applicants. Specifically, two items that we would like to discuss are the single audit response and the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure. OVW requests that all applicants provide a statement as to whether they have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their last fiscal year. If they have, then they indicate that and also specify the end date of their last fiscal year. However, GFMD is finding that applicants do not always include all of this information. Please ensure that this question is answered in its entirety on the summary data sheet, question number 3. Another item that we'd like to highlight from the solicitation is specifically for nonprofit organizations. If you use the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure to determine your executive's compensation, you are required to provide a disclosure letter. Please refer to the solicitation for further details and a link to a sample letter. Note that there are 4 required parts of this disclosure letter. The sample letter provided outlines all 4 parts of the disclosure. So please be sure to follow the sample and provide a response to each of the 4 pieces. The next item that we'd like to discuss is the pre-award risk assessment question, which assists GFMD during their pre-award risk assessment review for all applications. Excuse me. Each applicant must prepare a response to all 11 questions, and each question has multiple parts. We've noticed from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the questions, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant and which may delay funding decisions. Some of the most common issues that we've encountered have been, for example, question number 2, where the applicant indicates that they do indeed have internal policies, but they do not provide a brief list of topics covered in the policies and procedures. On question number 3, some applicants fail to provide a brief summary of the organization's processes for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditure. These are just a few examples, but in general, please make sure that you read each piece of each question and provide a full and comprehensive response. This next slide will quickly highlight some resources that are available as you're creating the budget to be submitted with your application. Over the last couple of years, GFMD has developed a detailed webinar presentation on how to develop a budget to be submitted with OVW applications. This presentation addresses some of the challenges that you may face when your budget and with your budget, and provides some insight on OVW's budget review process. This webinar can be found at the link on this slide. Next up is the uniform guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR 200. Use your favorite search engine for this one. Other resources include the DOJ financial guide and the solicitation itself. We know this can be a lot of information to process. So if you have any questions at all about the GFMD information provided, please feel free to contact the GFMD Help Desk at 1-888-514-8556 or by email at ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. Please allow up to 24 hours for us to respond, and we'll answer your questions accordingly.
Thank you, Yolanda. Hi, everyone. This is Neelam Patel. I'm the team lead for Training Technical Assistants, and I'll present the remainder of the slides for this presentation. We are now moving on to the MOU, which is the Memorandum of Understanding, and is explained on pages 32 to 33 in the solicitation. The MOU is worth 15 points and is not part of the page limit for the project narrative. It is its own standalone document. Please read this section very carefully and begin working on this section as soon as possible. OVW requires that all potential technical assistance providers to enter a collaborative relationship with organizations and/or key consultants who will bring the necessary substantive expertise to the project. The MOU should connect to the project narrative activities and budget. As I said, you should start working on your MOU as soon as possible because of the signatures involved with the MOU. As I said earlier, we require all applicants to enter an MOU with key project partners, which may include any organization and/or individual that will have a significant role in the development and/or implementation of the proposed project, regardless of receiving financial compensation for their partnership. Any project partner that receives funding is considered a key partner. Letters of support or letters of commitment from a partner or potential partner in lieu of signing an MOU will not be considered in place of an MOU. The MOU should be signed and dated during the development of the application, and it should be signed by the authorized representative for each proposed project partner agency or signed by the individual contractor or consultant. A question we have received in the past is, does an organization need to get a signature of an outside accountant that they will be paying under the consultants category that works on their organization books? The answer is no. The accountant is not an MOU partner. Also, applicants must only submit one MOU with all the partners' signatures. Please do not submit multiple MOUs for each partner. All the partners must sign this one MOU. However, applicants may submit multiple signature pages. So for example, if you have 8 partners, it might be very difficult to get all 8 signatures on one page. So you may want to have one signature per page, but make sure that all the names are listed so everyone knows who is signing the MOU. Electronic signatures will be accepted, but please make sure all electronic signatures are legible, especially when scanning or printing the signature pages. There is no page limit for the MOUs, but we do recommend that you are not excessive with the MOU pages and do not include information not requested in the solicitation in the MOU section. For example, in the past, we have seen MOUs with excessive lengths of 15 to 30 pages, which did not even include the signature pages, and the applicant still didn't respond to the criteria that's written in the solicitation for MOUs. So please remember, respond to the criteria requested. Next slide, thank you. The letter of support is worth 5 points. Only one letter of support is required. And if you submit multiple letters, only one of those letters will be reviewed and scored, and it will be up to the discretion of OVW peer reviewers and OVW staff to determine which letter will be reviewed and scored. The letter of support must be from a previous recipient of the applicant's training or technical assistance. For an applicant that has never had an OVW TA award, those applicants should include a letter of support from a recipient of their TA training from the past. It could be someone who's local or regional, or it could be another national organization for which they provided training TA. Please make sure to provide that. The scoring criteria as stated in the solicitation for the letter support section. Please make sure you provide the scoring criteria to whomever is writing your letter support, so they have that criteria to write the letter. That individual organization providing the letter support must write the letter. The applicant should not write the letter for them. And again, as I mentioned earlier, only one letter support. Please note that applicants will not receive additional points for additional letters. Next slide, thank you. Moving on to other application components on pages 33 to 34. These are to be submitted with your application. This includes the non-supplanting letter, the confidentiality notice form, as well as the summary of other federal funding. Applicants must disclose all current and recent OVW awards as stated in the solicitation, which includes any current grant or cooperative agreement under any OVW grant program, or an award that has been closed within the last 12 months from the date of this solicitation closes. Subawards under an OVW grant or cooperative agreement that is open or that is closed within 12 months from the date of the solicitation. Hold on, 1 minute. Yes. So you want to make sure that it's any current one, anything that's been closed within the last 12 months of the date of solicitation, any subawards under an OVW grant or cooperative agreement that is open or that closed within 12 months from the date the solicitation closes, any pending applications, either the lead applicant or as a partner or potential subrecipient, any federal awards to do same or similar work, and or pending federal applications to do same or similar work. So please read this section carefully. The applicants, you must provide this information in a table using the sample format found on the OVW website. The link is provided in the solicitation. Applicants must provide this information in the table using the same format found on the OVW website. Again, as I said, the link is provided in the solicitation. Both tables, if applicable, should be uploaded as attachments in Just Grants. Additionally, you will be guided in Just Grants to submit the electronic disclosures of lobbying activities certified standard assurances. Next slide. As a reminder, SAM.gov registration to receive a UEI can take an average of 2 to 3 weeks. Grants.gov registration can also take an average of 1 week, and Just Grants registration needs to be completed only after the submission of the Grants.gov submission or the SF424 and disclosure lobbying activities form. Just please see page 35 under how to apply step 1. So please do not wait too long to do all the registration for the application, especially in SAMS.gov and Grants.gov. We advise that you complete the registrations for SAMS.gov and Grants.gov by February 15th. If you encounter any difficulties with SAM, Grants.gov, and Just Grants, The email addresses for the tech support for the systems are listed on pages 34 and 35. I will now move on to late submission requests, which is explained on pages 35 to 37. As I stated before, you may want to make sure you register well in advance and upload your application as soon as possible and not so close to the due date and due time, because you want to anticipate any technology issues with uploading your application. There are limited circumstances for requesting a late submission. Please read this section to fully understand the circumstances and the steps for requesting a late submission. Any applicant requesting a late submission must follow the instructions listed in the solicitation, which includes requests due to severe weather or national disaster or technical difficulties beyond the applicant's reasonable control. Missing the grants.gov deadline is not a technical issue for late submission. Again, please note, failure to begin the registration and application submission in sufficient time or having the correct version of Adobe Acrobat is not an acceptable reason for a late submission. We have seen this many times where applicants in the past were not able to submit their applications by the due date because they did not have the correct version of Adobe on their computer that they were going to use to upload the application. The next two slides are reminders of how to address technical issues. You must have documentation of any issues with grants.gov, your SAM registration, and Just Grants. You must contact OVW Technical Assistance Program accordingly per the instructions in the solicitation. Please make sure you read this section very carefully in the solicitation and follow the directions if you encounter any technical issues. And this slide is for Just Grants. Everything is written in the solicitation regarding experiencing any technical issues with Just Grants. Please maintain any documentation of issues and communication with the OVW Just Grants Help Desk and follow the instructions regarding if you encounter technical issues. Please note, it is not guaranteed that applications submitting via email due to technical issues will be considered for funding. And again, as a reminder, please make sure you complete the steps required in grants.gov and that your application is successfully submitted in Just Grants. It is recommended that applicants begin the submission process at least 48 hours prior to the deadline, not later than 24 hours from the due date from both steps. Again, as we explained earlier, you don't know what technical issues you may encounter with uploading your application. And it also gives you enough time to address any errors in uploading your application. Also explained previously, if your organization is submitting applications for multiple purpose areas, please make sure the correct attachments are uploaded for each application. Make sure you are uploading the correct documents to the correct application by labeling them correctly for each application and for each document you're uploading. So in the past, we have seen applicants submit multiple applications for different purpose areas, and then they've uploaded the wrong attachments to each of the applications. So like, for example, they've uploaded the wrong MOU to the wrong applications. So make sure you have a proper way of labeling every part of the application if you're applying for multiple purpose areas. Also, as a reminder, do not combine applications when uploading in Just Grants. And as I said, just make sure that you are separating them if you're doing multiple purpose areas. But also, please do not submit a test application to see if grants.gov and Just Grants works. We have seen applicants do this to make sure they know how to work the system. The system does work. All applications submitted, even if it's incomplete and even if it's a test application, are considered an application submission and will be reviewed accordingly. Finally, please avoid submitting one application multiple times. We have seen this before where applicants have submitted the same application 5 times. As was stated earlier, we will review the most recently submitted one of if you have multiple ones for the same application. Next slide. When submitting your application in Just Grants, you will either be entering specific components directly into Just Grants, like the abstract, or you'll be required to upload attachments to Just Grants. So again, allow enough time to upload documents in Just Grants. When submitting your application in Just Grants, applicants may save their progress in the system and revise their application as needed prior to hitting the submit button at the end of the application process in Just Grants. Please do not hit that submit button until you are done with your application and ready to submit your full application. Double check that all the attachments are correct, that you have all the attachments before you press submit. So double check, make sure everything is attached accordingly. The application submitter, entity administrator, and authorized representatives will receive an email from Just Grants confirming the submission of the application. Please make sure that these individuals whose emails are connected to the application are continuously checking their email for the confirmation of submission. OVW will not provide confirmation that applications were received. We have had in the past that applicants' executive directors assign this responsibility of uploading the application to an assistant who is not checking their emails after they submit it, and then realize after the deadline has passed that their application did not go through or they forgot to attach a required part of the application. Likewise, we have seen executive directors or directors of development upload the application, then they go on travel and they're not checking their emails and realize late that their application did not go through. So the responsibility is on everyone whose email is attached to the application. I also want to state that OVW can see in Just Grants when an applicant starts to upload their application and if they are still uploading their application documents once the deadline has passed. We have had applicants state that they were having technical issues in uploading, but we could see that there were no technical issues, but that the applicant started the process less than 24 hours or even an hour before the deadline. So that is not a technical issue. But one thing we did mention earlier as well is once the grants.gov deadline is passed, and if you have any errors in your submission in Just Grants, you will not be able to resubmit. You have to have a Just Grants.gov done first. So that's really important to know because there are a few days in between the grants.gov deadline and the Just Grants deadline. Next slide. Couple of final reminders. Please read the solicitation thoroughly. This webinar was an overview of the solicitation, and we recommend that you clearly and carefully read the solicitation. Please also respond to the purpose area description for which you are applying and address the scoring criteria for each section based on that purpose area. Do not combine purpose areas and do not create your own purpose area. Double check all your attachments before uploading and label them accordingly. Do not submit multiple versions of the same application, and please start your uploading at least 48 hours from the due date and time. Again, as was mentioned earlier from Asma, this is a multiple step process. There are multiple due dates that you must keep in mind. Letter of intent is due no later than February 15th to give you enough time to address your SAM or grants.gov issues. We have that both the SAM and grants.gov registration should be completed no later than February 15th, 2024. Grants.gov deadline is no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on March 7th, 2024. Please start that process in grants.gov as soon as possible. And finally, the Just Grants deadline is 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time, March 12th, 2024. Applicants can begin the submission of their application in Just Grants once their submission in grants.gov is completed. So it's very, very important to complete the grants.gov submission as soon as possible to give your organization enough time to submit in Just Grants. And finally, please contact OVW, Just Grants Help Desk, grants.gov, the OVW Grant Financial Management Division, and the OVW Training and Technical Assistance Initiative if you have specific questions or issues about the solicitation and submission of your application. So now we'll take some questions. I've been responding to questions in the Q&A and in the chat. I do have a couple of things that I do want to remind everyone of, and we've talked about, is, again, do not wait till last minute for the Just Grants. If you're going to be applying for multiple purpose areas and for your letter of intent, you only need to submit one letter of intent, and you can list all the purpose areas in that one letter of intent. Also, when you are writing out your application and using the criteria in the narrative section, please make sure that you are responding in your application directly to that purpose area. So your responses to the criteria in the narrative, MOU, and the budget and letter support should be in response to the purpose area for which you are applying. So that's a key thing to keep in mind. And the budget must match the project narrative and MOU. We have seen sometimes where there might be someone listed in the letter of intent, in the who will implement section, but they're not listed in the budget or even in the MOU. So make sure that everything kind of matches up. Asma, are there any questions in the chat?
I'm not seeing any new ones that you didn't already answer, but we can wait a few minutes to see if there are any more coming in.
And we will have the recording and the script and the PowerPoint attached, I believe, in a few weeks. So it should be there hopefully in about 14 days. I see one question in the chat box. Can a for-profit be a sub-grantee? Possibly. I would say that if you are looking at a for-profit to be a sub-grantee, you'd have to explain it in your MOU. It just can't be a lead grantee, a lead applicant. But it will, be reviewed to see the partnership and whether or not it's a sufficient partnership at the same level as we would look at a nonprofit or a consultant as well. So I see another one written here. I just wanted to verify that for charts, formatting is supposed to be the same font size. Yes, exactly. So it needs to be the same font size. You can use single space. But keep in mind how many charts you are using overall, being very mindful of when is it appropriate to use a chart. Usually when you're writing out your timeline is when we see most use of charts.
Another question we had was, how many organizations each year do you usually select for TA projects that have never received an OVW TA grant before?
We don't have that number. It really is based on who is the best applicant, who scored the highest, and is the one that we're funding. It could be one that's never received OVW funding before. It could be an organization that's a current TA provider, or it could be a grantee that's now applying to be a TA provider. So there is really, we don't have a number. It's really based on which application best responded to that purpose area and was scored accordingly in peer review in our programmatic review. Well, we'll stay on for, there's another one. If we propose providing in-person TTA, can we assume that OVW grantees would have funds in their own budget to cover travel expense attend? Yes, if you are proposing TTA for specific grant programs, grantees are required to put in travel funding in their budgets to attend training and technical assistance events. The key thing to remember, though, is if you are proposing a project which may want to reach out to STOP sub-grantees and you receive STOP money in your award, you would be required to have scholarships for sub-grantees. So if that is one of your target audiences for the in-person TTA for your project is STOP sub-grantees, you will need to include some funding for scholarships for them to attend because STOP sub-grantees do not have travel funds. And usually it's not, if like you have an event of 50 people, it's not 50, but it'd be like a percentage of it. Maybe you're looking at 10%, but there should be some funding for sub-grantees if that is a target audience. Well, we'll stand for the next few minutes.
Another
Oh, I see.
question. Then, for programs who are continuation, do the details of the original justification for the project proposal need to be included fully, or should the focus be on the future of the program?
If you are applying for a competitive purpose area for which you are a current recipient of that purpose area, it's competitive, you must follow the criteria in the narrative. We are not asking, you can talk a little about if you wanted to, what you've done, but you have to follow the criteria because you are scored based on the criteria, whether or not you are a new applicant for that purpose area or continuation. All right, we have another question. A sub-grantee, not just a project partners, goes into the MOU. Yes, if they're getting a substantial amount of funding based on the information in the solicitation and they are a significant partner on the project, then they should be on the MOU. All right, I think that concludes the questions and answers. Thank you all very much. Feel free to reach out to OVW if you have any questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.